And enter to Embark. We have a choice. We can play now. It will give us some random dwarves and some random equipment, some random resources, and it will land us somewhere on that map tile. Or we can prepare carefully. Now there's a whole bunch of people who have put together some prepared carefullies for you, depending on what kind of thing you want. So like this one specialises in the skills that you might want. This one gives you dwarves where none of them are fishermen. Yeah, we're going to go for prepare carefully, and we are going to create our own Embark. So it's enter to prepare. Now, the first thing to notice is down here, we have some points to spend, and we're going to go about spending those points. But first thing I want to do, because I always forget if I don't do it first, is we want to name our fortress and we want to name our group. Capital F to name our fortress. The naming conventions are fabulous. At the moment, our default is oil boots. Now we can use the names that are built in to create one, but I think I'm just going to hit random several times until we come up with one I fancy. Okay, I think I've found one that I want. So we're going to call our fortress Drink Gold because that sounds perfect. So it's escape for done. And now let's name our group. So this is our people. The Oceanic Chamber. No, I don't think so. Let's press R to randomize it. The Tangled Quake. And I think we found the name of our group as well. I think we're going to be called the Sunny Spears because that sounds nice. So let's choose that. Okay, so back here we now know the name of our group and our fort. So now let's do something with our dwarves. Now we can have more than 400 points, and I'll show you how. If you press tab, it switches from dwarf skills to items that you're taking with you. Okay, and it has geared us up with some default items, and we might not want to take all of those items with us. If, for example, using the arrow keys, we decide that really a wheelbarrow and a step ladder, they're awfully expensive and they're very easy to make. We've got wood where we're going, so we'll easily be able to make wheelbarrows and step ladders where we're going. It's plus and minus to increase or decrease, so we'll say minus for that one and minus for that one. And we now have 500 points to spend. Let's go back to the dwarves, because I want to have a look at the dwarves. You don't need to do this if you don't want to. When I'm streaming, I don't usually bother. It's not dreadfully important, but hey, I've got the time. I'll show you what I do when I've got the time. I have a look at my dwarves by pressing V. Now, before I get into that, I'm going to give my dwarves some names that are easier to recognise, so it might make it a bit easier for you to follow along. So give me a minute and I'll just customise the dwarves. You customise the dwarves with C. So I've named the dwarves, which I think will help you to follow along. Now you'll notice I have started every name with a little A in front of it. I find it really useful as we go on through the game. Some of the lists of dwarves will appear in alphabetical order. I also find it useful to know who's been with us the longest or the shortest, so that we know who has been subjected to our terrible environment for the longest time, or who we trust the most. So as we go on, every migrant wave, as I rename the dwarves, I shall put a letter in front of them that indicates when they arrived with us. I'm naming the dwarves after my Twitch subscribers and Patreons, of which I currently have 42. We will get more than 42 dwarves. If you would like a dwarf named after you in the future, drop a comment and I'll put you on a list. Now, what to spend your points on? If you ask 10 experienced Dwarf Fortress players how to set up your starting 7 and what to take with them, you'll get at least 20 answers, because everybody has their own preferences and everybody has at least 2 ways that they'd like to do it. One for an easier environment where it's going to be focused on building and making stuff, and one for a difficult environment where you need to be prepared to fight from the outset. So we're going for an easy environment. So we're going into a relatively safe space. Now that doesn't mean we won't die instantly we arrive there. That's perfectly possible, but we're going somewhere that is relatively safe. That means that we don't need to worry as much compared to embarking into an evil biome about things like military. We can worry about that in due course. So this is how I'm going to set it up, and I'll explain why, but this is not the right way to do it. There are many different ways. So I like to identify 4 of my initial 7 dwarfs for special skills, and I'll show you who and why. So first of all, I want a dwarf who is going to be our military leader. Now this is not somebody who's going to fight. This is somebody who is going to plan the battles. This is the officer who stays back from the front line. And this is particularly important if we send somebody out raiding, and I'm hoping we will be doing some raiding. The army that goes out to raid is more likely to have success if we have somebody who is trained in military tactics. The person I've found who's best suited for this, he's not ideal, but is the best out of the 7, is Jim. Now, be prepared for a big wall of text, but I'll point out the important things. So Jim here, the important thing about Jim is that he has great analytical abilities. That's really good. An amazing spatial sense, yeah, I figure that's useful as well. Social relationships, great kinesthetic sense is a good thing too. Poor focus, it's not dreadful. Difficulty with words and a poor memory isn't really relevant. So that's the key thing though, great analytical abilities. I think spatial sense is also important, and I think kinesthetic sense is helpful. So those particular abilities make him one of our most useful dwarfs out of the bunch for being a military leader. So we're going to give him the tactician skills. So let's scroll down the list. It's very unusual to find somebody to have a migrant come to you with tactical skills. It's quite a rare skill, which is why I like to have it at the outset. There it is right at the bottom. It's the plus and minus keys to increase against. So I'm going to give him the maximum tactician skills I can. So he'll be a proficient tactician. And then I'm also going to give him leadership skills. So we'll spend all of Jim's available points on leadership and tactician. Now for our next dwarf. So it's arrow keys to move between the skills and the dwarves, and the arrow keys to move up and down between the dwarves. Now Tammy, she is the best one of the remaining 6 to be a trader. So let's have a look at Tammy. So what she's got is an affinity for language and a good memory. Now a good memory also makes her a good scholar, good academic, but she respects commerce. Some dwarves really hate commerce. Could be better, but for what we've got, Tammy is the best. So Tammy we're going to give some skills to, and in particular the most important skill is to be an appraiser. That's somebody who knows the value of things. So we're going to give her, doesn't need to be much, just adequate appraiser will do fine. That's enough of a skill to understand what the value is of the stuff that we're selling and the stuff that we're buying. Now I think we'll give her some negotiator skills as well. Might give us a better price. So just a little. I don't want to spend all my points. The next one that we want is a doctor. Now we haven't got anybody who stands out as a doctor. Usually what you look for is somebody who has a deep desire to help others. Now we don't have anybody who is particularly interested in helping others, but looking through what what I think I'll have everybody doing. I think Alfie. We have a look at Alfie. Alfie's just a solid dwarf. There's nothing in particular about Alfie, one way or another. Yeah, just a good solid dwarf. Doesn't always get on with people, but often gets on with people. But he's brave in the face of imminent danger. Now, your doctors can sometimes be in imminent danger. The hospital can be a dangerous place. That I would consider to be a secondary thing for doctors, but seems as we haven't got anyone who particularly wants to help others, he's probably the best one we've got. And he thinks that a skilled warrior is a beautiful sight to behold, and doctors tend to see warriors a fair amount. So, making a doctor. We want to put a couple of points into diagnostician. That's probably the most important thing. Some surgery, some bone doctoring, a suturer for sewing up those wounds, and at the top, a wound dresser. So that has spent all of Alfie's points. Now, one more skill that we want. I don't always do this, but I think it's a good idea to have somebody whose mining skills are just a little bit higher than normal, because that will make them mine faster. Now, ordinary skills for doing ordinary jobs, I don't usually invest points in, and that's because they skill up actually quite quickly. It's difficult to skill up a doctor, it's difficult to skill up a trader, it's almost impossible to skill up a military leader. The miners will skill up really quickly, but if we have someone with a bit of skill in mining to start with, it just means that in those first few days, we'll just get a little bit safer, a little bit faster. I think we're going to go for Adam. There's nothing particular about Adam. Again, it's just a good, solid dwarf. Alfie and Adam kind of interchangeable in that sense. There's nothing that suggests that he would be upset by mining. Miners often spend time alone. They don't get to work on crafts an awful lot, so we want people who are fairly stable in their mindset. He's probably not going to get to be involved in the military, so I'm looking for someone who doesn't have a great desire to do a particular job for the miners, because the miners are going to be dedicated to mining, and that's not going to satisfy a lot of needs. So Adam's pretty good for that. He's going to be fairly solid. Now, having a quick look at the others, Potatina is, again, good solid dwarf. Potatina has an awful lot of stuff about art. Although she dreams of crafting a masterwork, I think we're going to focus her on engraving eventually. I think we'll get masterwork engravings out of her, but she's big into her art. She also likes a good fist fight. She will skill up in due course, so we won't put any skills in that. Right, now Bernie. Bernie is our problem dwarf. Bernie he's very conflicted, so he finds that the proposition that one should work hard in life is utterly abhorrent, but he's also disgusted by merrymakers. He doesn't care about art one way or another, but somewhere else down here, he really likes art. There's a lot of things about Bernie where he dislikes this, but he kind of likes it, so he's a very conflicted character. Bernie is not somebody that we want to have around our other dwarves too much. He's going to be a bit of a problem, I suspect. So for these kind of dwarves, I like to make them into brewers and cooks. They tend to be kept out of harm's way. They're kept busy enough to stay out of trouble. They're not in very crowded environments. Yeah, it's a generally brewers and cooks. Good place to put your troublesome dwarfs. Spotted Cow. A Spotted Cow's an unusual dwarf. Spotted Cow particularly wants to be outdoors, likes nature. He personally has a deep respect for animals, plants, and the natural world. Now, no dwarf likes working outdoors. He does like working outdoors and grumbles only mildly at inclement weather. Now, our first 7 dwarves are dwarves that are prepared to be outside, but most of them don't like the natural world. They're just alright with it. So this is quite unusual. He wants to be around animals, he wants to be outdoors, so I think Spotted Cow we're going to have working outdoors an awful lot. He'll probably be a planter, grower, farmer type character. Yeah, we'll get him doing outdoor stuff, but we don't need to spend any of our skill points there. So at the moment we're left with 353 skill points, and I'm going to tab over to the items. So what are we going to take with us? Well, let's start at the top of this list. So copper picks. I want to take more than 2 copper picks with us. We're going to be doing a lot of digging, so I'm going to take 4 copper picks. Now, battle axes, because I'm not expecting to have to fight, so I'm only going to take 1 battle axe with us. That's a bit of a risk. Certainly if I was going into a riskier environment, I would definitely take at least 2. But yeah, we'll just go for the 1 and fingers crossed we're all right. Now, an anvil. Anvils are very expensive, and you can guarantee that merchants will come and arrive. We'll get a merchant within the first year. So we can be sure that merchants are going to bring anvils to us. We have to have 1. That is absolutely critical to the game. If there is any risk that merchants are not going to be able to make it to your site, make sure you take an anvil with you. But I'm going to take the gamble that our merchants are going to reach us and they're not going to be killed the moment they step on the map. Now, ale and beer. I like to bring with us at least 80 barrels, but I like to, well, actually 84 barrels. But I like to bring a variety, so I'm going to knock Dwarven Ale down to 31. And then I'm going to increase Dwarven Beer up to 31. Then I'm going to press N for new. That allows us to choose from the things that are not already in that list. So all of the stuff that's available, using the arrow keys down to drink. And I'm going to select Dwarven Rum. Now, Dwarven Wine, we are going to make an awful lot of ourselves. It's the easiest of the alcohols to make, and we'll be having an awful lot of that. So I'm not going to bring any Dwarven Wine with us. So I'm actually going to bring all of the stranger beers, the more difficult things to make. So there we go. So that is 83 barrels of alcohol. And the reason why 83, by adding the extra 1 on the end, that extra 1 drop of alcohol comes with a free barrel. That means we don't have to make so many barrels, which is a good thing. All right, up to Plump Helmets spawn. So Plump Helmets are the things that we're going to make alcohol out of. We'll probably be eating as well. We're going to want more than that. I'm going to increase that up to 15. Pigtail seeds, we are going to make cloth out of. It's equivalent to cotton, I suppose. So we want more of that. We want 15 of that. Cave wheat seeds. Cave wheat is difficult at the start to process. I'm not going to take cave wheat seeds. Same with sweet pod. We make rum out of sweet pod, but it takes some processing, so we're not going to bother. And rock nuts also take processing, so we're not going to worry about that. Dimple cup makes dye. We're not worried about dye. Now, taking some food. So we've got prepared mountain goat kidneys. We've got 15 of those. Well, that's a good thing. And cave lobsters. Well, I'm going to get rid of the cave lobster. And that's because we would need someone who's working on fisheries to deal with those cave lobsters. They certainly can't eat them raw, and it might take a while before we're in a position to do that. So we're going to go and get some different meat, and we'll make sure that it's a cheap one. Now, if you really wanted to, you could have a look at what your dwarves' preferences are and find some meat that they really enjoy eating. But I'm just going to take chinchilla. We want 15, so I'm going to increase that to, we'll increase it to 5, and then we'll choose another one. We'll go for eagle meat. Again, it's cheap. the numbers down the side. As you can see, some cost you 2, others cost you 6. It's just that these ones, they're more valuable, they're more rare. So eagle meat, we'll bring 5 eagle meat. And then we'll bring some peregrine falcon meat. Sure, why not? Variety is good for your dwarves. They're always happy with variety. And we'll aim to get some variety as we go along. Right, thread. We want to take some thread with us, but I'm not sure that pigtail thread is the cheapest. So let's say no. Let's have a look on the thread screen. So pigtail thread would cost us 12 a piece. Silk thread only costs us 6 a piece. Yarn thread also only costs us 6 a piece. Let's go for silk, why not? So we'll have some cave spider silk. And I want to take 3 pieces of silk thread. Cloth. Now, cloth, I want to bring 3 pieces of pigtail cloth. Then I'm going to add some additional cloth. I'm going to add 3 pieces of cave spider silk cloth. Now, the reason for bringing 2 different types of cloth is that dwarves, they will have a strange mood. They will be inspired to create a masterpiece, an artifact. And when they get it into their mind that they want to create this thing, they will insist on certain materials. And if you don't have those materials for them, they will go insane one way or another. They'll either go berserk and start killing people, or they'll slip into a depression and they'll die of thirst and hunger. And so there's certain things that are more likely, or that could be asked for by a dwarf in a strange mood, that might be a little bit difficult to get at the start. So I like to bring those with us. So let's get all of the things that a dwarf in a strange mood might want. They might want some leather. Cheapest leather is costs us 5. So we'll bring 3 pieces of leather. Now a dwarf might want wood or stone, but we'll easily get those. They might want metal bars. We will be able to get metal bars relatively early on, but I don't really want to be distracted from whatever it is I'm doing in order to suddenly start making metal before I'm really ready for it. So let's bring some metal with us, and we'll make it a metal that we might not stumble across quite so easily ourselves. So I'm going to go for nickel. That can be just a useful metal to have to hand. Now glass, it's really awkward if you get a dwarf early on who wants to make something out of glass. So we're definitely going to bring a little bit of glass with us. Okay, back to where we were. Bags. Now it is a good idea to take some bags with you. Pigtail bags are actually quite expensive at 20 a piece, so let's say no to that and let's change that. You see, we can have leather bags for the price of 10, or silk bags, or yarn bags. I think we'll go for leather. How about mongoose? Yes, we'll have some mongoose bags. And I'm going to bring 3 bags. Same thing with ropes. I like to bring 1 rope with me. The first rope that we get, we're going to use in our hospital. We'll make a traction bench out of it. I like to bring 1 rope just in case we need it before we're ready to start making our own rope. We can certainly get rope cheaper. Let's go for a silk rope. Now quivers. Now this is controversial, but I am not going to bring any archers with me. I'm not going to have anyone do archery. I'm not going to bring any quivers, any bolts, any crossbows. So we shall do away with that one. Chestnut buckets. I'm not going to bring any buckets. I'm not going to bring any splints or crutches. We'll make those as soon as we get there. And so that sets up our main list of items. One last thing. I'm only going to add 1 for the moment, but we will top it up when we see how many points we've got left. I'm going to bring some powder with us. The powder I want to bring is gypsum plaster. It's really cheap, and gypsum plaster is used to mend fractures. They make casts. It's actually quite hard to come across. If you come across gypsum rock, you can make it yourself, Otherwise, you have to buy it off traders. And there's no guarantee that a trader is going to have gypsum plaster, or they might just have 1 or 2 bags of gypsum plaster. So it's definitely a good idea to take a little bit with you. And it's very cheap. Before we decide on how much we're taking, let's have a look at animals. I think it's fairly consistent that people take 3 dogs. I'm the same. It's like take 2 females and 1 male. Dogs are really useful creatures to have around, and you want to breed them, and so having 2 females gives you a head start. And then we'll do the same with cats. Most people bring at least 2 cats, 1 male, 1 female. I'm going to bring 2 females and 1 male because we're not putting points into military. We can afford to bring extra animals with us and extra resources. Let's have a look at the fowl. So we have a choice when it comes to egg-laying birds. We can choose hens, ducks, geese, peacocks, or turkeys. Oh, and guinea cocks as well. Yeah, I forgot about guinea cocks. Now, turkeys are one of the go-to options. Turkeys give you the most meat, the most leather, I think also the most bones. When they lay eggs, they lay more eggs than any other bird, and so they give you a larger clutch. It's about twice the size of anyone else. Turkeys have the most output. However, my preference is for peacocks, and that's because peacocks lay twice as fast as turkeys, and they give you half as much in way of resources, but they do it twice as fast. So they're roughly equal, but it's a little bit more spread out, so they're a little bit easier to handle. You don't end up having 60 peacocks peacock chicks wandering around. I'm going to bring 6 peahens. We'll have 3 for breeding and 3 for just giving us eggs. And we need 2 males, 1 for each of those 2 batches. Now we still have some points left over. There are some good meat animals to bring with you. Pigs are a good bet. Now the thing about pigs is they are the biggest animal that you can keep underground. You don't need to give them any grass to feed on. If something was to happen to our above ground animals, we've got pigs in reserve. So I'm going to take just 1 sow and 1 boar. Now, out of the rest of the animals, what to choose? Well, we've got 300 points. That's pretty good, actually. If you know that you're going to be in a biome where things are going to die fast, don't take any animals with you that are going to need pasturing because they're going to end up dead. We're in a relatively safe biome, so there's a chance that our pastured animals might survive for long enough for us to give them a safe place to live. So I'm going to take a gamble and bring some wool producing animals with us. Now the wool producing animals, the cheapest is to bring sheep. So we could bring a ewe and a lamb, but the best wool, the most valuable wool, and the animal that produces the most of the most valuable wool, it's actually llamas, but they're expensive. I'm going to bring 1 male and 1 female because it's a lot of investment in an animal that's going to be running around on the surface. Let's just have a look at the animals that I'm rejecting because I'm going to spend the rest of my points on stuff to bring. I'm just wondering whether I should bring another female llama. No, I won't bring any more. It's a terrible waste of money if those animals die. Right, let me just explain animals not to bring with you. Rabbits. When you kill a rabbit, you don't get meat, you don't get bones, you don't get leather. The only things you get from rabbits are skulls. Now, skulls can make valuable things, but they're not worth bringing with you. They just eat grass and give you next to nothing. Camels give you milk, but for the price, why would you? KV boars, they're hamsters or guinea pigs. A KV is a guinea pig. Same as rabbits. The only thing you get from a KV is skulls. You don't get meat, you don't get bones, and you don't get leather, so they're not worth bringing. Mules are not worth bringing because you can't breed them. Donkeys and horses, they give you milk, they give you meat, they give you leather and bones, but nothing else. They've got to be pastured. So I tend not to bring them. Same with cows and goats, water buffaloes, reindeer. I would rather bring an animal that gives us all of that and gives us wool as well. So that's why I choose the animals I choose. Okay, so we've got 177 points left. So what are we going to bring? Well, for a start, I am going to increase my gypsum plaster. I'm going to bring 10 gypsum plaster. I'm going to increase my plump helmet spawn up to 31 and my pigtail seeds up to 31. Now, plump helmets. Plump helmets are what we're going to make dwarven wine out of. It's a good idea to bring a good number of plump helmets with you if you can, so we'll increase the number of plump helmets. And we've still got a few points left, so I'm actually going to increase the number of copper picks. We'll have an extra copper pick. Sometimes when you embark, the only items that are available to you, instead of copper picks, it might be iron picks, and they're way expensive. Same with the battle axes. It might be that you can only have an iron battle axe. Again, they're much more expensive. The things that you're offered are the things that are available to your civilization, which is why it's good to choose a dwarven civilization that is relatively large, because they'll have more options available to you that you can choose from. It's got 10 points left. Go on then, we'll bring some more alcohol. We'll bring some dwarven wine with us. The more dwarven food and wine you can bring with you, the longer you can leave it before you have to start farming and brewing and cooking. It means that we can focus on safety before we focus on sustenance. Right, now something I'm going to do with this, because I might use this again, this particular setup. So I'm going to save this, and you might want to do that with yours as well. So if you press S, what profile are we going to call this? Well, the thing that's a bit unique about this particular profile is that I'm bringing llamas. So I'm going to call this my llama profile. Enter to save. There we go. So if I want to prepare carefully, but I already want all of the animals and all of this particular arrangement of goods selected, then I just need to choose my llama profile, and then I can go in and edit it. But yeah, right. I think we are actually finally ready to go to embark and go and have a look at our map. So I'm going to do that, and then we're going to call this episode to a close. But if you're a Dwarf Fortress player yourself and you've got some opinions on this, share your opinions in the comments below. And if you're a new player, have a look at what people are saying, because there are so many different ideas about good ways to do this. And remember, we are setting off into a relatively safe biome, so we're not expecting to battle immediately, although of course that might happen. Right, let's go see. And it's E for Embark. We have arrived. After a journey from the mountain homes into the forbidding wilderness beyond, our harsh trek has finally ended. Our party of 7 is to make an outpost for the glory of all Kullet Akum. There are almost no supplies left, but with stout labour comes sustenance, whether by bolt, plough or hook, we shall provide for our dwarves. We're expecting a supply caravan just before winter entombs us, but it is spring now, enough time to delve secure lodgings ere the cougars get hungry. A new chapter of dwarven history begins here at this place. Orillamul. Drink gold. Strike the earth.